You guys remember when I made that video on Bleach's great power system? Me too! Oh wow, you guys like that one a lot actually. Wait, who is the you here? Man, algorithms are weird. Anyways, crafting a magic system can be a pretty interesting thing for your story. In my video on Bleach, I said I think Taikubo made a perfect system when it came to integrating character work and expression through their abilities. But there's more than one way to make a compelling magic system, and thus I've chosen another one of my favorite magic systems to gush about, and one from one of the most unlikely of places. Video games. Now, usually many video games, especially RPGs, don't have a set of complicated rules when it comes to how they use their magic. I mean, I don't think giving specific casting requirements for all spells in Oblivion would make that game better. Which, by the way, Oblivion's the best Elder Scrolls game. Argue with the wall or something, but that's my thoughts on that. But occasionally, you find a game with a magic system that is incredibly unique and thematically dense. One of those games in question is Final Fantasy VII. Look, this is one of my favorite games of all time. Some of the earliest games and RPGs I played were those PS1 to PS2 era Final Fantasy games older family members would either give to me or loan to me, and also Kingdom Hearts. And to be completely honest, those two series were my introduction to fantasy as I know it, not Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or some more traditional fantasy affair. So these series mean a lot to me. Getting back on track, if you know anything about Final Fantasy VII, you are probably already aware of Materia. These little glass-looking orbs that you have to insert into slots on your weapons to use special abilities. And I'm not lying by saying the Materia system is one of the best magic systems on a writing level in all of video games. At least in RPGs. But for those of you who aren't aware, or maybe need a refresher, let me introduce the idea of Materia to you. Materia are created from an energy called mako. What's mako, I hear you cry out at the digital screen in front of you? I'm glad you asked. Mako is the solidified form of the life stream, the life energy of the planet itself. Well, the planet of Gaia, the setting of Final Fantasy VII. But essentially, it's mined from deep within the planet and then solidified to form into Materia. Now, after explaining all that, I will say when it comes to character work, Materia is not exactly at the top of the totem pole in that aspect. To be fair, it is developed to exist in a game world first, and with that comes different applications within the writing. However, this system is debatably one of the best when it comes to thematic relevance and lore. And like the actual use of lore, like world building and contextualizing elements of the story. Not, solving the mystery of a story that's kind of vague to begin with. Sorry FNAF fans, no shade to you all, but you have kind of driven that word lore into the dirt. I don't blame you guys, but I just thought you should know. Anyways, let's talk about how Materia ties into the many themes of FF7, as well as the themes of its world. For all of you who can see the gameplay on screen, you could easily tell that this game isn't your typical fantasy setting. There isn't really your typical Tolkienisms or D&D-isms to be seen here, though there are a few themes Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy VII share, to be honest. But some of the themes of the game are self-growth, loss, industrialization, and its effect on nature. But Materia heavily reflects the last two I mentioned. Remember how I said Mako was mined directly from the planet? Well, it's also not great for the world and therefore damages it whenever it's made, thus essentially creating products that give people magical abilities and skills at the expense of the planet. Many weapons and items and other things in this world are basically made with slots for Materia to be added, literally turning the magic and life essence of their world into an entire market, essentially forcing anyone who wants to use magic in any efficient way into a capitalistic venture. Much like our own world, sure, we want to help the world be healthier, yet we're still stuck using machines that create pollution. Ironically, whenever someone uses Materia, they're manipulating the life stream itself in such an unnatural way that it harms the planet with each use. It's an intriguing question to ask yourself. To continue your survival, do you use Materia, or do you deny its advantages in order not to harm the world? Sadly, the practical choice is to use Materia if you're going to go out into combat. And this is great work when it comes to introducing thematics into the power system of your world. That little tidbit of info is always in the back of your mind with every single fight. It makes you question your place in your ecosystem, but also makes you realize in some ways you're just a small part of the world. But Materia is still a product you can collect in 5 unique colors: green, blue, yellow, purple, and red. Each one has different attributes. Green, being the color of magic, allows you to use spells of all sorts like Bolt, Fire, Ice, Cure, and so many more. Blue is a much more unique Materia, more or less adding modified effects onto other ones you own. It's also unique because it can only work if there's a prior Materia connected to it in your weapon slots, but it can heavily enhance the effects of other Materia with it. Yellow could give you unique abilities, like the ability to copy moves your enemies do, or the ability to steal things from people mid-combat, and so on. This is much better for those who don't want to go full mage or anything like that. purple is a much more independent materia that just provides passive buffs, like buffing your health or mana. It's the most basic materia in comparison to its brothers. And finally, but not least, red, the summoning materia, allowing you to summon powerful, mythical, and even godlike creatures, such as the Phoenix, Bahamut, Ifrit, and all your classic Final Fantasy fare. Look, commercial aside, I know that's a lot of explanation, but this is the most interesting part of the system. More or less, whatever materia you buy is your form of expression within the system. It's not quite like Bleach's system where everyone's power appears in a unique way, but I think materia adds another unique layer for character expression. Think about it like this. Imagine you're fighting a guy with a massive sword, and that sword has various slots of materia. Now you can automatically assume something from his weapon of choice alone. 1. This guy's probably loaded with money, especially if he's able to afford this much materia. 2. This guy might have a ton of abilities, thus he might be stronger than you. This system supersedes the inherent need of your traditional power scaling tropes. You know, no need to show a power level or to reveal an extreme show of force. Nah, this dude has a big sword with like 12 materia slots. Thus, we can automatically assume, to some extent, his level of power and skill. Now, keep that image of this guy in your mind real quick for me. You see his sword and you see the colors, green, blue, and purple. So now we can figure out what his battle style may be like. Green implies he has some sort of magical abilities, though if it's attack or support magic, we don't know. Blue implies he's heavily modified his spells, and purple shows he needs to enhance his abilities beyond their usual limit. And there we have a pretty complete concept of this character's fighting style purely shown through their choice of materia. I don't think there's many magic systems where your choice of approach is shown very literally. Maybe to some that's frustrating, but for me it makes it so much more interesting. Now we've entered a battle of examining each other's abilities to see what each can do. Though if you have the scan materia, you can just, scan them for their abilities, but whatever. It's literally a system where your purchases matter, and what's more industrialized than that? Though of course I should talk about it from a gameplay perspective because that is the primary medium that it's made in. Materia as an RPG system is probably my favorite of all time, leaning heavily into customization and simplicity. However, that simplicity is only surface level, really. You have to learn the system a bit for it to become genuinely crazy powerful. And, if I might say, FF7's gameplay kinda reminds me of something in RPGs that I kinda feel is missing in the modern day. The ability to intentionally break the game. Not with exploits or anything, it's cooked into the system. The only other RPG from the past 5-ish years I remember giving me that same feeling was Cyberpunk 2077, but that could be saved for a video way in the future when I have more time to talk about that game. Anyways, FF7's materia system, to me, is basically the perfection of the turn-based RPG customization systems. Through the materia you earn and buy, you can make your characters into hypothetically any class you want. Though certain characters start out closer to certain RPG archetypes, you can completely circumvent them and make them into whatever you please. For example, Tifa is essentially your typical monk archetype, possibly the most iconic example of one in a JRPG. But if you really felt the need to make her something closer to a black mage or a dark knight, then you can absolutely do that. One of my favorite builds to do whenever I play this game is actually one I saw from a video. I believe it was Super Eyepatch's Wolf video on the game, which he's probably the best video essayist on the entire internet. I mean, he definitely influences me in some way. But anyways, the build is called Immortal Phoenix Bodyguard Cloud. Essentially, if you combo together cover and counterattack, essentially making it so you'll block attacks given to other characters and have the chance of swinging back at those very attackers. Now add on Final Attack, which is a materia that allows you to do a final action upon death, and mix that with the Summoned Phoenix materia. Basically on death, summoning a phoenix, doing a massive attack, and reviving everyone from death, assuming you have the right amount of MP left over. And you see, this is what makes the gameplay and mechanics of materia so fascinating. There's very few games I can think of that just allow you to get away with something like this. And sure, maybe to some this feels like a bit too much, but I think if you actually know how to build it, then it's fair that the game allows it. Not every game needs to be soul slop and be vague with the player. Not saying there's anything wrong with the design of a lot of Souls-style games, but I find the idea of every game's difficulty needing to be compared to that is a bit absurd. Though it's interesting how this gameplay style does reflect into the story and world, because yeah, these orbs of materia allow you to get away with so much, and it really shouldn't. These things are unnatural, and thus it shows the sort of destructive power that comes from this abuse of nature. Using these things that go far beyond our biology, and it's shown many times that prolonged exposure to mako is dangerous to humans. But materia is just as, if not more dangerous than the mako pulled from the planet itself. I mean, think about the horrifying idea that some random ass guy could buy like 3 green materia, slap them into a kill stick, and now your village is gone, burnt into flames, wiped off the face of the planet. The games don't really address this outright, and to be fair, I understand why. There's a lot of ideas going on within the world of Gaia, and the characters are dealing with much more existential threats, but to the average person, it must be sort of terrifying. It's a literal arms race of sorts, but with magic. And that's an incredibly unique spin on the usual fantasy tropes. It literally takes away the scholarliness and philosophy around magic, something that's meant to be beautiful and wondrous, and makes it into something you can buy for $5.99. It's an intriguing concept that makes a ton of implications on the dystopic fantasy of the world of FF7. Honestly, it's one of my favorite magic systems in all of fiction, and definitely one of the most special in the entire genre. And that's all I gotta say about that. Just another little quick video talking about a power system I really like. I tend to really do focus on power systems when I'm writing and stuff because I find them interesting to see how mechanically you can tie together these ideas with themes and character work and such like that. And I honestly think that while usually we focus on mediums like manga and comics and all sorts of other things, games can provide an interesting way to look into it too, because unlike other medium, they have interaction. And thus I think that's a very interesting lane to look into when it comes to a story. Not saying you should write your books like video games, because that can get really obnoxious, but maybe examine things from a new lens. But yeah, I don't know, maybe in the future I'll make a longer FF7 video because I am a really big fan of the series and I probably could write many videos on it alone. But for now, I think this is where I'll keep it. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.